I am so excited to have 111th guest in Paola's Studiolo, Roger Thomas, internationally known designer, who was very kind to invite us to his own home and to his own Studiolo. Roger, thank you so much for coming to Studiolo.
Welcome, Paola. It's a pleasure. I love your Studiolo. I have not seen all 110, but I have some homework to do. I will be watching them. I adore them and watch them every chance I can get.
Thank you. Thank you. For me, it was this incredible honor to actually meet you and to discover your world, the world of interior design, the world that is close to me because my family, of course, lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. So the American Southwest for me is home. And so much of your life was in Las Vegas, the city that I think you love deeply, and you probably love it as much as you love Venice.
I have a love-hate relationship with my home city. I think that one of the reasons for my big success in design there is because I did not like the way it looked, and I wanted to change that. And I met Steve Wynn when I was 13 years old. My father was his mentor. And when I was 30 years old, I went to work for him after a career of doing other interior design, mostly banks. And he allowed me to make my own dreams come true. And my dreams didn't look anything like Las Vegas. And I think that's the reason I was successful, because I was able to change it. And he believed in that vision as well. He also felt Las Vegas needed to be elevated from what it was. Most people had accepted Las Vegas, the version of Las Vegas that was prevalent by the time I started designing in hotels in the 1980s. So Las Vegas is different now than it was then, thank goodness.
Yes. You know what is interesting to me, and the book, your wonderful book, can you pull it out? I know we have it handy. It is such a wonderful discovery, published by Rizzoli, Resort Style Visits of Celebration. How long did it take to actually put this book together?
A lifetime.
Yes, yes, yes.
The book covers the last 20 years of my career, which begins with Wynn Las Vegas shortly after I finished the design and delivery of Bellagio. My husband prompted me to do the book. I said, why would I do a book? I'm not a writer. I'm not a bookmaker. A term that is not intended, Las Vegas-wise. So it took about 3.5 years. The photographs all existed, so I had that advantage. I had a wonderful article was written about me, and so I knew which writer I wanted, okay. The guy who got it right the first time. And then fortunately with Rizzoli and with a wonderful book agent, Andrea Monfried, I was led to some of the best book designers. And I had a great revelation in making a book, and that was, I'm not a book designer. I design other things. So when I found Sam Shahid and Mark Krause, who designed the book, and they said, well, which photographs do you want? I said, you have all of them, you pick.
Wow.
You're the book designers. I want the cadence and the way the book rolls to be your fault, not mine this time. We had a premise for the book, which was talking about my technique of design, which I call evoca-tecture. And so we went forward with that, and it was a wonderful association and a great experience.
Yes.
And of course, Rizzoli is the dream publisher of books on design and architecture.
Yes.
So I was very fortunate to pair with them.
I think you were very kind to give us a chance to look through the book. We will be sharing some of the images with our wonderful public today. But what I wanted to say, let's leave Las Vegas and your incredible career aside for a bit, and let's talk about where we are. We're in Venice. We are in a beautiful home on the Grand Canal. Look how beautiful this interior is behind me. When I grew up, I want to be just in a house like this. Tell us what brought you to Venice and why Venice in the first place?
Well, just like my work, I wanted to make my dreams come true. My very first trip to Venice was 45 years ago. I was with the mother of my daughter, her first visit to Venice, my first visit to Venice. And so we shared the discovery together. And I had a mission. I brought a design for a chandelier. I was connected to what I know now to be a legendary maestro of glass on Murano named Archimedes Seguzzo. He created this chandelier for a restaurant. I was given 90 days to design and finish. So imagine thinking that I could get a custom-made Murano chandelier designed, made, shipped, and installed. And I didn't know that I couldn't do it, and so it did happen. And I fell in love with Venice. I completely fell in love with Venice. It is the most unique city on earth. The light quality, the reflections constantly happening, the integration with water for me was magic. And I said to myself on my second day, this is the way I want to live. And so I started designing special chandeliers for every single project I did after that. In that way, I would have to come to Venice and Murano to make sure the chandeliers were made properly. So for 45 years, I was visiting Venice 4 to 5 times a year.
Okay, wow. And then, how did you find this home?
About 10 years ago, 5 years before our lovely pandemic, my husband and I were here in Venice. I was doing some work again, and we walked by a sign in a window that talked about a condominium that was being developed and available for sale. And we went to look at it, and it looked like it was so easy to own. It's the only building in Venice that has a concierge 24 hours a day. Wow. That made it easy. It had an elevator. It was a storied palazzo. Mozart had lived in the palazzo when he was performing at La Fenice. It was centrally located, and it was a tiny apartment. It was something I wouldn't have to worry about because it would be taken care of. And I realized from looking around Venice a bit over the years that every single apartment in Venice is completely unique. And to find what you're looking for takes an enormous amount of effort coupled with a lot of time. So for 5 years, we were here for 2 months a year, 1 month in the spring, 1 month in the fall. And all we really did was look for apartments. So it took 5 years to find this apartment, which was introduced to us almost accidentally. It was not on the market. The owner of the apartment had to meet and like the people he sold the apartment to, and fortunately we qualified. Wow. And so here we are. We've now been in this apartment for 5 years. It was needing complete restoration. It had not been touched for over 50 years, so it needed all new plumbing, all new electrical. It did not have air conditioning. It did not have the kind of heating that makes us truly comfortable. It was antiquated. Wow. Every light fixture location you see in this room is new. We excavated brick in order to locate it, but it had some extraordinary charm. One, it's on the Grand Canal, so the view is extraordinary.
Views, yes, yes.
Two, I believe that the apartment had probably been worked on by a guy named Tommaso Buzzi. So the terrazzo floors, some of the paneling in the room, there's some white paneled doors behind us, were completely unique and very special. And it does not have a Venetian floor plan. It has a Milanese floor plan.
That is it. I thought so.
Yeah,
yes.
It feels more like an American apartment.
It does.
Than it does a Venetian apartment.
That's so true.
And that meant that the problems of design were very easy for me to solve. And I could do it rather quickly, and I could do it remotely. It was the perfect event. So.
Kind of like a dream come true, really,
Yes.
in every possible way.
Yes. Very fortunate.
Unbelievable. I believe that the two cities that your life has led you, the destiny will lead you to, Las Vegas and Venice, have things in common.
They do.
And we talked about this. It's like people say, what? But I think there is, right? There is. Tell me your take on it.
Well, Las Vegas was invented as a place for people to escape and do things they would not do at home. Venice was not invented for that reason, but by the late 17th and especially into the 18th and certainly the 19th century, it became the place in Europe where you went to do things you would not do at home. There's a famous tagline for marketing Las Vegas: what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And I believe that Venice for 200 years fulfilled that pressure valve necessity for all of Europe. What happened in Venice stayed in Venice. It's where the most sought after, intelligent and elegant courtesans were. It's where gambling happened, privately and publicly. It was that place where it was the playground of Europe. And at the same time, and this is a bit of a difference from Las Vegas, it was on the list of every single grand tourist. All of those nobles in Europe who were continuing their education by traveling through the European capitals, for them, Venice was an absolute must. They might miss some other cities, they might miss Vienna, but they wouldn't miss Venice.
Yes, incredible. I think also interesting, amazing is that the Grand Tour, when we talk about people coming on the Grand Tour, they would stay for a long time.
Yes.
You would set a voyage and you would be gone for a year. So that means that you would stop in Venice and really take your time here. Exactly. What I meant, this is such a brilliant comparison of the two. You know, what happens in Venice stays in Venice. I love that as well. It could be a new tagline. But I also love that the both cities have to be invented from very unlikely conditions.
So Venice is, when Venice was discovered in the late 600s, it was just flat marshland.
Yes.
And building buildings required complete invention. And the Venetians, therefore, grew to be a group of people who constantly faced problems that no one else had ever had or solved. And so the ability to invent and to imagine things that had never been seen before and realize them became the reality of Venice. That's why it's such a remarkable city. They had the problem of building basically on water. It's often called the floating city. Yes. Las Vegas was in the middle of a very dry desert, with flash floods on those few occasions when it rained. And it was going to be built for a purpose that no city had ever been built before. There was no place in America other than Reno that was developing casinos. And in Las Vegas, they took it further than casinos. They saw it as a place to create destination resorts. So the entertainment policy was more lavish. Famously, Las Vegas was where the Rat Pack would hang out and perform. It's where every major American performer and international performer wanted to appear on stage.
And even today.
Even today, it's still
known
as the entertainment capital of the world. Venice at one time had 90 theaters.
Wow.
It too was the entertainment capital of the world. I think more operas premiered in Venice than any other single city. Milan might be able to claim much the same, but it was truly the entertainment capital of Europe for a very long time, and therefore the world, really, because that's where it was happening. And so the invention of the way you built Las Vegas, which demanded creative solutions for everything, and the way Venice was created, which demanded creative solutions for everything, I think is similar. And Venice did not need to spend its money on defenses during a time when most cities were building fortifications and walls. Venice was building exquisite architecture. Las Vegas, as a way of attracting those people who would come from everywhere but Las Vegas. When I moved to Las Vegas at the age of 3, it was 30,000 people. Each new invention had to be better than the last. That was the attraction. Oh, I've got to see that. And I had the privilege of working for the best inventor in the history of Las Vegas, inventors, Steve and Elaine Wynn, because they really were partners in the way I worked with them. And Steve invented the front yard attraction, a volcano, a sinking pirate ship, fountains. Because if you see that in the front yard, I've got to see what's inside. And it got everyone through the doors. It was a key to great success until the very last one, which my book is about, which was when we had really figured it out, and it was a keep away sign. He built a mountain in front of Wynn Las Vegas, and if you wanted to see what was inside, you just had to come inside. By then, his fame was so much that the name alone, Wynn, on the top of the building, that meant you had to see it, because he had always delivered on the promise.
Wow.
Always, always, always. And I'd been along for that ride for 20 years by the time we started building Wynn Las Vegas.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
You know, we have some images coming up where
Good.
you will be sharing with
them.
us a little bit of, well, your design style. You also are very kind to share with us some of your Venetian secrets, some of the restoration works that you are involved in. So there's a lot coming up, and let's see if I can share my screen. That way I will have you start really from the beginning, and we can maybe go through it. Let's see if we are, oops, slideshow, and here we go. All right, I think this should be it. Let me just make sure that the image is great, and we can start with, oops. All right.
So here we are.
Here we are in Venice. I want to just ask you, did you go yesterday to this beautiful church, Santa Maria del Salute? It was a special day, the 21st of November.
It is. It's the day of La Salute, which translates to health. And Venetians come home to make the pilgrimage with their family, to go to the church, to light candles for a year of good health. The church was finished in 1631 as the completion of a promise to the Virgin Mary that if she delivered the city of Venice from yet another plague, they would build a magnificent temple for her. So this is probably, at least in my estimation, the most beautiful Baroque church in the world. It's one of the most elaborate and inventive. It had a very restricted site. So it's basically a round cathedral, if you will. It's not a cathedral in the classic sense, but it is this magnificent round building with 3 facades, because you approach it on the Grand Canal from 3 directions. And it was meant as a processional church. So it's up on this large platform of steps, because everyone would go over a bridge from the San Marco side of the Grand Canal to Dorso Duro, and the Doge, the Patriarch, the noblemen, the senators, everyone would, in their very finest garb, the important priests, etc., would walk up this flight of steps into Salute for this particular day. And I didn't go yesterday. I'm not one for crowds, and I knew if I went a day later, it would still be very crowded. But to this day, they build a bridge across the Grand Canal specifically to celebrate Salute. And so it not only is wonderful experience in terms of experiencing Salute, they cover all the columns in 18th and 19th century hand-woven cut silk damask, which in itself is an exceptional addition to the interior. But the new vistas you get on the bridge of the Grand Canal are worth just that much of it. It's exciting. Yes.
And also how the church dominates the skyline of Venice. I mean, really one of the most recognizable sights you can have in the city.
Imagine you're arriving in the 17th century and this church had just been completed. This was the way you entered Venice. This was the main portal to the Grand Canal. This photograph is taken from the Bacino. So you would have arrived in the lagoon, and merchant or tourist, you would have gone up the Grand Canal, and this magnificent new structure would have been your gateway.
Amazing. Very different skyline, the one of Las Vegas. I think everyone, of course, is familiar with the city. I have been there so many times, but actually more than this image, I would love you to talk about this one, because this is Las Vegas that you started with.
This is probably, this photograph, aerial, is probably taken the year that we moved to Las Vegas, which was 1953.
Amazing.
My father was partnering with a wonderful guy named Jerry Mack to found the first bank to lend money to casinos. Gaming was a legal industry, the largest industry in the state of Nevada, and my father could not figure out why you wouldn't lend money to the largest industry. But there was a puritanical attitude in bankers, and we don't lend money to them. So my father figured out a way to be very successful in doing that by promoting each loan to be specifically for construction and improvement. And in that, he encouraged larger signs, more beautiful architecture, more important interiors. So in a way, my father started my project and my career for me. He was a visionary guy.
Can I just say that talking about Florence and Florentine history, of course, the Medici family is the family that has been involved with the banking industry in 1400s. And they're the ones who kind of start really helping the local businesses with exactly kind of what your father was doing many centuries later, using the capital for the wealth of the city, for being proud of creating a Florence that everyone would be looking at, and also the tax kind of breaks for improvements. So, for example, beautiful Palazzo Strozzi, which these few months now is celebrating Fra Angelico with the best ever exhibition of Fra Angelico. It was actually built as a beautiful building by the Strozzi family, Filippo Strozzi, to whom Lorenzo di Magnificent said, why don't you make something really beautiful, kind of renovate this part of the city and you will get a tax deduction. So interesting that these Florentine tactics survived and worked even in this incredible city so far away.
It's the same kind of example where a banker saw his responsibility being far beyond the mechanisms of the bank, far beyond lending money, the way in which you lent money to stimulate growth and to stimulate the improvement of your city was very important to my father and uncle.
Why do you think Why do you think it was?
Well, because they landed in this city, which was more desert and freeway than it really was a city. And they made a commitment to grow this city. When they landed, this is what we're looking at right now, is the original El Rancho, which was the first sprawling kind of, let's call it it was a motel, but it was an attractive resort. It had little casitas and a casino and a showroom and a lounge. But if you went far to the right of this through much desert, you would have still found in 1953 the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which at that time had 6 acres. And my father and uncle realized that if you're going to have an important city, it needs an important learning center and university. So they personally acquired about 300 acres of land surrounding the university, put it in a foundation for the university's use so that the university had a way to grow. Otherwise, it would have never been able to grow into the university that it has become to service the city of Las Vegas. The city was about 25,000 people when this photograph was taken. Wow. It is now 2.5 million in my lifetime. And so one of those prescient things that my father and uncle did was to see the need for culture and a university. I myself am now involved with a group of people to build the very first art museum in Las Vegas. Amazing. We are the largest metropolitan area in the United States without a fine arts museum, and we're going to correct that.
Yes, of course. I guess the biggest one would be Phoenix in Arizona. Phoenix Art Museum, I think, is the largest one in the Southwest.
Well, actually, the largest is the LA County Museum of Art.
Okay, yes,
LACMA.
of course. Yes,
and
yes.
We have, the reason we're building this museum and the reason we know we can do it, we're already halfway to our $200 million fundraising goal, is because we are going to be an affiliate of LACMA. I've been trying for 40 years to build an art museum in Las Vegas, but the stumbling question was always, where will you get the art?
Yes.
Because art is so valuable and the market is so far beyond the ability of any community to fund. We have access to 2,500 years of art history, the best efforts of man on the planet from 2,500 years ago until yesterday in the LA County Museum of Art collection. So that's where the art is coming from. Wow. The largest single art collection in the Western United States. So
amazing.
We get to go forward.
So this city kind of goes from that to that, but let's actually really, I mean, I just love this photo. Is it true that Frank Sinatra sang on your birthday?
Well, I was in the Copacabana showroom at the Sands for a dinner show of Frank Sinatra. I'm 8 years old. I'm the little kid on the right. My older brother, Peter, is on the left.
Oh my gosh.
We left 2 other brothers at home. My sister had not yet been born. That's my father, Perry Thomas, and my mother, Peggy Thomas. And it was a dinner show. So before the lights were dimmed and Frank came on stage, I don't remember who his opening act was that evening, I got a birthday cake. And I thought, well, this is a normal thing for kids. You know, you celebrate special events by going to a dinner show at the Sands or the Riviera or the Dunes or whichever hotel you went to. I just thought everybody was growing up that way, because when you grow up in a place and that's home, that's normal to everyone. So I now appreciate how very special, how very blessed, not only to grow up in Las Vegas with the kind of entertainment available to us that we had, but also to grow up with my father and mother, who were a very, very special couple. And I think gave all 5 of their children the greatest gift possible. And that is, they always told us to do what we loved. My father would have loved it if all 4 of his children, all 4 of his boys had become bankers. But he never told us that. We were to do what we loved. So when they had a son who wanted to be an artist, great. If that's what you want to do, we'll support you in every way. Greatest gift parents can give, I think.
Amazing. And just the photo, it looks like one of those beautiful Hollywood movies where the life in America had elegance and style and grace. Just a really beautiful family.
My mother was very sophisticated. She was the one who gave me my love of art and encouraged my love of art, collected art books. And we grew up, strangely, in Las Vegas in interiors designed by a graduate of Cranbrook who had attended with Eero Saarinen, George Nelson, Jacqueline Larson, Charles and Ray Eames, that whole group of important mid-century modernist Americans. So that's what I grew up in. Wow. Again, thinking that's a normal way to grow up. It was not. So now we go.
Look at you.
We go a bit ahead, and I've become very interested in art. I'm 30 years old in this photograph, and Andy Warhol is taking his Polaroid for my portrait. I had become, this was while I was trying to build an art museum. I was just going to work for Steve Wynn at this point. And so it was a great turning point in my life. And being part of Andy's army and hanging out at the factory and meeting the people that came through. I was always, they were always happy to see me for lunch because I was constantly helping them find new portrait commissions. So I was a persona grata at the factory, and I had a wonderful experience. I miss Andy Warhol and his genius every day.
And you know, in your book, you also write about this kind of how from him you learned to trust in your own creations.
Yes.
And
yes.
That they would then attract people who can really appreciate and understand what you are doing.
Andy was not understood by most Americans. I'll bet 90% at that point. This was 1981. I think 90% of Americans thought he was a crackpot. They're still thinking, why in the world would you paint a soup can? But he was so much more than that, and he stayed with his own personal vision, regardless of what happened, and found a way to not only make it work, but to make it wildly successful. And I learned from him that risk is an important component to creativity. If you are being inspired, that's fine, but if you're being inspired and repeating what inspires you, why bother? It's already been done. So he gave me a lot of courage, and Steve gave me, and Elaine gave me a lot of courage. I think particularly Elaine, because she always pushed me to go beyond boundaries in areas that I wasn't particularly great in. I wasn't the best colorist. She had an extraordinary color eye and would push me beyond color boundaries. So the next photograph is evidence that I actually went through 6 years of art school. I never studied interior design, and I think one of the reasons I became a successful designer is because I had no rules. I didn't know there were rules. And so I was simply doing what I thought was best. But I learned to draw, and these are what I call capriccios. So each one of them, there are 3 on the screen, is just a group of things that have inspired me. And I don't draw them while I'm looking at them. I let them go through my personal filter, and I might draw them in the restaurant at lunch an hour or 2 later, or at dinner. I might jot notes about what's inspired me, but generally I just do these. Now, the exception would be the figure drawing on the far right, which is, of course, the Neptune that's in Bologna. And so sometimes I did see things that I would draw from, but most of it is just an exercise in drawing what delights. And sometimes the lines that I drew, especially in the middle section, were just because the exercise of drawing them was so much fun. So these were done, of course, as you can see by the date, during COVID. I did at least one capriccio every day during COVID, which was a wonderful way to exercise and get freedom and give meaning to that. So let's start with how you design a hotel. So evoca-tecture, I learned by the time I had designed parts of the Golden Nugget, much of the Mirage, Treasure Island, and then Bellagio almost entirely. I had learned that my job wasn't to find the most beautiful fabrics and wood finishes and marbles and combine them in beautiful ways. My job was to create an indelible experience for our guests. And that the main components, although I was using stone and textile and wood and all of metals and all of those things that go into them, my main job was to create drama and joy and surprise and mystery, all combined in comfort with all of the decisions made so well that you felt elevated. You felt your best self. I like to call them places of possibility. This is a 27-foot long crystal dragon that was created in 90 days. Wow. Again, Steve had this favorite 90-day. Remember, there are cash registers at the end of this. There's a big payoff, and I have to get rooms open. This was a restaurant that had been designed by another really high-end interior design company for our new hotel in Macau. I was very busy getting Wynn Las Vegas open. And Steve called me from China and said, you've got to do something about this restaurant. It looks just like a Chinese restaurant. And of course it was. This was to be a 27-foot long carved wood painted dragon. And I realized that that was just like a Chinese restaurant. So I found a conspirator in Hong Kong named Clive Miner, who helped me realize this. The head of the dragon is a single pour of crystal clear glass weighing 650 pounds. And all of this was imagined, designed, and built in 90 days. And I think, not knowing that you can't do it, you just do things that you think are impossible. This is the same hotel. I wanted these heroically scaled vases. You can see how big they are compared to the cabanas poolside behind them. They're 17.5 feet tall. I specified them to be in carved stone because I had purchased a carved stone piece much like this, about 5 feet tall in China for the Mirage. And they called me from China and said, we cannot find a crane on the continent that can lift a stone vase of that scale. So would it be okay if we made them in gilded bronze? Sure, I don't mind. Make them in gilded bronze. I'm still amazed that you can make a 17.5 foot tall bronze object, much like Verrocchio had to do when he created his equestrian here, famously had never been attempted since Roman times. So we got it done. And this is same hotel. These have become the icon of the hotel. I was standing inside the lobby, which is behind those fountains, with Steve about a week before we opened, and he was looking across this reflecting pool to those vases, which were 2 pools and 2 waterfalls away. And he said, something's missing. Steve was always right. I never, ever questioned Steve. And I said, instantly I knew. I have midground, background, there's no foreground. I called a secret source in Hong Kong who had these 8.5 foot tall cloisonné camels from the 19th century. I said, if you can get those camels to Macau by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, I won't even haggle price. I'll pay full price. He said, of course we can get them there. I had bricks painted black, put in the pool under the feet of the camels. I said, Steve, meet me in the lobby at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, I had camels walking on water, which became the icon of the hotel.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Oops.
I think we have gone.
I have gone, yes.
Oops,
sorry.
We have.
I pushed the wrong button. My fault,
it's
everyone.
Okay. It's okay. We got a little preview.
There we go.
All right,
okay,
here we
there
go.
we go.
Yes.
So, another Chinese hotel. This is actually inspired by a great two great Venetian paintings, both by Veronese, one of the three most important artists of the Italian Renaissance. I like the architecture of one of his paintings, which is the Dinner at the House of Simon, which is here in Venice at the Accademia. But I like the party atmosphere of the Marriage at Cana better, which is in the Louvre. It's the painting Mona Lisa stares at all day long. And I had an exceptionally talented group of painters in San Francisco who combined the two and created this. It is not glued to the wall. It is hung like a tapestry as a large, loose textile on the wall. But what fun to dine with all of Veronese's friends. I would tour the world. I would circumnavigate the world about twice a year looking for things no one had ever seen before. And I found this magnificent early 19th century, about the time of Napoleon, crystal chandelier. It was the most robust, chunky, even slightly modern chandelier I'd ever seen. It was very expensive. I called Steve, sent him a photograph and said, I've got to have this chandelier. And he said, well, what are you going to do with it, my boy? And I said, I have no idea, but I promise you magic. So when I was assigned this bar, I knew that if I centered the bar around this chandelier, it would be perfect. The chandelier has no lights in it. We lit it invisibly from the side so that it just glowed. And then we put layers of cut crystal behind it in the bar area. Another great restaurant that we did. This one was based on one of Elaine Wynn's requests and one of her experiences. We grew up in Sun Valley, the Wynns and the Thomas family together. And in Sun Valley was the lodge dining room in the oldest ski resort building in America. And what Elaine loved about it was you arrived at the top of the dining room and then it cascaded down the hillside. So when a woman took the effort to dress and arrived in the dining room, everyone turned to look at her and she knew it had been worth the trouble. And she wanted that kind of romantic gesture again in Las Vegas. This is called Alex. It no longer exists, but I think it is my favorite room, and you can see more evidence of my Venetian chandeliers. If you look at those at the very top left of the image with the large lampshades, they have beaded trim on the lampshades. Christmas decoration from Pottery Barn that I sewed onto the silk shades.
Oh my gosh.
Again, in my tours around, I discovered this genius of the late 19th century in Paris named Giraudoux, who created these dragon mirrors in many different ways and many different shapes. The dragons are flying, they're clutching, they're holding moon shapes, round shapes, rectangles. They're big, they're small. I collected these for 5.5 years. I finally had over 50 of them. Wow. Giraudoux made them all in mahogany. I wanted to use them in China where they value gold more than mahogany. Probably because mahogany originally came from that climate. And so I had them all gilded and hung in one single restaurant at the Cotai Palace. And I developed the wall cover that's behind it for a company called Meyer Romanoff because I couldn't find horizontally textured wall covers. This is hand combed by an instrument made by a violin maker in Chicago. And it's vinyl on vinyl, so you can run luggage into this and nothing happens. So Steve, when we started building Wynn Las Vegas, Steve had acquired Pablo Picasso's possibly most important painting in private hands at the time called Le Rêve, The Dream. And the original name of Wynn Las Vegas was going to be Le Rêve. And so he said, I want you to express the dream in your design. And I had this thought about my dreams. In my dreams, things start and stop, and it's like stop action. When you go back to it, it's different. So I thought, what if I created these parasols? I was drawing a lot of parasols at the time, inspired by Steve's painting of Madame Monet by Claude Monet, who was holding a parasol. And I would often be in meetings with Steve in his office with Madame Monet, and I would start drawing fantasy parasols. And I thought, well, what if I created these large parasols? They turn, they move up and down, the lights glow up, they go down. And so if you're having a conversation with someone you love, you're looking at the parasols, then you look into the face of the one you love, you look back at the parasols, they're not the same. Is this a dream? So that became the heart of Wynn Las Vegas, Le Rêve. Now, having that idea is great. It took 3 years, traveling to a factory an hour and a half each direction, so 3 hours just on the road, 3 times a week, so about 5 hours of a very busy day to create these because they had to be completely invented. But when we did Wynn Las Vegas, Steve said, after having a tropical casino, a pirate casino, and one inspired by the north of Italy and the south of France, he said, this time I want something no one has ever seen before. So absolutely everything had to be invented. Wow. And that's why the book covers only the 20 years of complete invention. This is a story about opulence. So I was charged with doing a hotel in China that honored China. Steve said, we've been so fortunate to be in China. I want you to honor China. I said, okay, well, I can't design a Chinese hotel. I didn't grow up Chinese. That would be artificial. But I'm a great student of chinoiserie. And I realized that I have many more influences and have seen many more things than those who created chinoiserie the first time. So we will reinvent chinoiserie for the 21st century. And this is that expression. So the carpet is a cloud motif I found in embroidery, but it's woven with metallic elements in it, so it shimmers as you walk across it. The walls are fish scale, which is more a European motif than it is a Chinese one, but everything they reflect is something that is chinoiserie. There were frog beams in the Ming Dynasty, and they are what I used as the openings for these opera balconies. These giant ceramic vases, each vase is nearly 7 feet tall, are refreshed every day with live bouquets, and they sit in a pool of live flowers of the same color, so that when you walk in the restaurant to the far left and you go through this enfilade of these enormous vases filled with enormous flower arrangements, the reaction I always want. And then we hand embroidered the back of every chair in a design we created. We even created the design of the chair. Every one of the Chinese lanterns that you see is in high polished bronze rather than being created the way a Chinese lantern would be created. And then I even created the tassels with Samuel & Sons in jade green and found these magnificent jade green goblets to grace the table, that was the pièce de résistance that finished the entire room. So Marco Polo brought China to Venice, and I thought when I did this restaurant that I wanted to bring Venice to China. So all of the light fixtures on the ceiling were created by Mario Fortuny, who of course created them in Venice. So I completely covered the ceiling with those. And then we used these wonderful giant chrysanthemums, a much revered flower in Chinese culture, in this what's called cracked ice, the pattern on the floor and on the screen that was also taken from Chinese art. And I even created entire walls covered with tassels because the Chinese were some of the very first to use tassels. So if one tassel is good, 500 is better. And one tassel is 11.5 feet tall, the one in the very center, hanging from a bee that I found in Hong Kong. So just constant excitement. Remember, every day I wake up, my job is to make my dreams come true. I never felt like I was working, not a day of my career. It was just excitement from front to back. I started working at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I never got home until 8. It was truly joyous. This is the Cotai Palace, and this is the decoration for the opening. Jeffrey Latham changed the history of floral design when he developed his magnificent floral designs for the Georges V Paris. During the beginning, the first 4 or 5 years of Jeffrey Latham's floral designs at the Georges V, it was one of the 3 top attractions in Paris. The Louvre, wow, the Eiffel Tower, and Jeffrey Latham. He beat out the Arc de Triomphe. So he became a very good friend, and he would come to help us open properties. And here we got so ebullient that he had the flowers pouring onto the floor. And all of these gilded vases you see, They were leftovers that I had. He said, I need something really big to hold these flowers. What have you got? I had ordered more than I needed from Global Views, and there they are, perfectly put to use. And the cabinet in the back is one of my favorite creations. We cut apart 19th and 18th century Coromandel screens and inlaid the best parts of them in big white lacquered cabinets, honoring China. This is the living room of a single guest accommodation, a villa. It has 22-foot high ceilings. The drapery is completely embroidered. The tassels are 6.5 feet tall. The paintings were created specifically for the space. The chenille fabric on these sofas, which were designed for the room, were hand woven just off of Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, specifically for the room. Every single thing in this room is completely custom for our very, very finest guests. There were 6 of these accommodations. The interiors, all by themselves, were $7.5 million each.
Wow.
Same room, looking at the view you see when you enter. Out a 150-foot long swimming pool with jets in it. Because in China, as Steve realized so brilliantly, space is the luxury. And so we created this great feeling of space. And this is on a rooftop. Wow. So the space continues forever. The view is off into nothing.
Wow.
A restaurant in Las Vegas that had been designed by some really good friends of mine. It needed a redo. And it was all in neutral earth tones. We had this magnificent 75-foot waterfall behind it. And I decided that since we were serving Japanese food, this is called Mitsumi. And my favorite form of Japanese art, because of its complete variety, is the obi, which is used to belt the kimono. And so I collected obi for 3 years and used them hanging in strips on the walls. One of the obis on this particular view was expanded into the carpet design. We used Japanese nobility marks, their kind of crest, embroidered on the back of the chair. And I had a koi pond, because I've always been mystified by koi and their constant beauty, and I meditate on them. And I had collected in Chinatown 2 little rubber koi. They were about 3 inches long. So I put a wire in them. I bent them into this leaping koi figure, and I had a friend named Scott Acton in Las Vegas make them 5 feet tall.
Wow.
So we had great fun. A men's spa. And this is just a lesson in keeping things rather simple. Very hot pool, very cold pool, but in a surprisingly easy kind of atmosphere. Something that this is now, I've amped you up, now I need to calm you down. And so this is one of those calming elements. Again, creating things hopefully that no one had ever seen before, with Venetian glass tiles completely covering all of the walls and all of the pools. Venice goes with me everywhere. In Las Vegas, Baccarat is the high limit game. That's where the biggest players win and lose, the greatest single wins or losses. And so we have this beautiful lounge for them to, or their entourage, which is often the case, for them to relax in, go to the buffet, get served champagne and cocktails. So it's a lounge, but I really imagined it like an elegant living room for you to visit, a place where you could really just kick off your shoes if you wanted to and feel at home. But again, everything is made custom for the space. Nothing exists. The buffet in the back is one of my designs for Edward Farrell Lewis Mittman, which was inspired by the 18th century French furniture that's covered in gilded bronze. Because when you walk by that furniture, it scintillates, it's lively, there's action and reflection. And so I covered the front of this green oak colored buffet and several other cabinets with wrought crystal cut in completely eccentric shapes so that it did the same thing. It catches light, it glints, and it moves as you move across the room. So I would always be asked after creating these spaces of celebration, how do you live? Do you live, does your house look just like the hotel? And the answer is absolutely not.
But you did write in your book that you wanted your guests to kind of live in the way you do, in the spaces you do.
Well, I wanted my guests to feel comfortable, and I wanted them to feel a possession of their space. We didn't really look at many of the rooms, but I designed the guest rooms to be so comfortable that it felt like you'd lived in it in your own home for several years and corrected all the mistakes. And we did that by building a full-scale model of every single one of them. And we slept in them, we showered in them, we did everything in them to make sure that everything worked. And if anything wasn't perfect, we changed it. Often we would work on those rooms for a year and a half before they were ready to produce.
Wow.
So when we got to the market, we had already tried it out. Even the casinos, we built a full-scale model of a section of a casino, which is why I was able to develop the only gaming tables in Las Vegas with chandeliers. When you put a chandelier over a 21 table or a crap table or a roulette table, you obscure the view from what's called the eye in the ceiling, the cameras that watch everything going below, which is a requirement of the Nevada State Gaming Control Board. We had a full-scale model of our intended casino for Wynn Las Vegas, and I wanted to make each blackjack table, crap table, roulette table feel not like a blackjack table, but feel like my blackjack table. And so I thought, well, we feel that way in our own homes and dining rooms. And what makes it feel that way is we connect to the chandelier above and the table, and everything is of a piece, floor to ceiling. It's our space. So I wanted these chandeliers to personalize the tables. Steve allowed me to spend over $250,000 developing a chandelier that had better vision of the table than the traditional eye in the sky. And so we patented it. So we're the only ones with chandeliers over gaming tables.
Oh my gosh.
So this is my home in Las Vegas. And the answer to me living and relaxing in my own home was to not design it. I had a brilliant architect named Mark Mack. Mark was born in Vienna, grew up in Austria, studied in Austria, but went to California much as Richard Neutra did, and was very inspired by the architecture of Richard Neutra, but had this magical sense of proportion and surprise, and created this exquisite home that really honors the desert and the place it lives. I lived in this home for 27 years. And it was like waking up on vacation every single day. It was one of the greatest architectural experiences I've ever had. It was great to entertain in, it was great to be alone in, it was great to install an art collection in, and I was just enchanted every moment I was there. Still in the family. My older brother owns it now.
Wow.
And I don't know how much my older brother owns it, but his wife is a great connoisseur of design and art. She's an artist herself, and I know that she completely appreciates what this house is like. This is the interior. I decided, because I'd lived in other homes in Las Vegas, every time I entertained, no matter what I did to set the table and make it glorious, create an exquisite living room, everyone gathered in the kitchen. So I said, okay, I give. We created a magnificent kitchen with a beautiful dining area, a living area, so that everybody could be in the same room at the same party. But then we created a pantry. So after dinner was served, after the good smells were made in the kitchen, and the kitchen was always camera ready, once everything was cleared away, all the bad stuff disappeared behind a door, and all the noise and things happened off stage, so that you did not have a kitchen filled with dirty dishes. The kitchen looked as immaculate after dinner as it did before. You can see the art collection that's developing. My Warhol portraits are on the left with a Donald Judd over the library, and a first century Roman duodomenos torso that you see. So rather eclectic, a little, I see a Tony Berlant, who was a whole nother story in my life, Rick Dillingham pots, and Sinufu house posts. So all over the place. And this is the way we live in California now. I spend about 4 months of the year in California, 7 months of the year in Venice. And so this is the living room in the California house, which I call the tree house. It's elevated above these 200- and 300-year-old oak trees, and is Again, like living on vacation. And now I've collected the furniture that really intrigues me is the furniture created mostly in France in the 1930s when we had the transition from Art Deco to modern. How did modern happen? And it happened by the best designers by using the classic designs of the 18th century when most of the furniture forms we use were invented and stripping them of everything, but keeping their complete comfort and the lyrical proportions and curves, everything in them. So much of what you see is 1930 Parisian, of course, with another Roman bust. Some of my vases on top of an Hervé van der Straten cabinet, a 1930s desk made by de Confrère in Belgium. Jean-Michel Franc's very first US commission included the desk chair, which was for Crocker. It was his penthouse at 945 Green Street in San Francisco. That chair now lives at the museum in San Francisco because it's so much a part of their history. So I live with what I love, and I use my homes as a laboratory. This is the way it looked for the photo shoot, but the art, the vases, the chairs, the arrangements, everything gets moved around constantly so I can discover, is this better, is it worse? I'm always looking for what a change in environment does to the solutions of the way you live.
So no design is ever perfect?
I hope not. I think perfect design would be boring, and perfection is the enemy of the good, right? If I'm heading for perfection, I won't keep heading.
Yes.
Because I'm going to convince myself that I've done perfection and leave it that way and not let anybody touch it. That's dead. That's a dead interior. I like interiors that change. I find that if I don't move the art around the walls, it becomes wallpaper.
Yes.
And it's better to energize my collection by moving it around and experiencing it differently. So this is the library of that same home with the double panel Warhol portrait. And the Judd has now moved from Las Vegas to California. Everything moves. There's a wonderful Kenneth Price, his last creation called Jumbo, to the far left of the portrait. And then another view of the library, which is truly a library. It has stacks. When I sent my book collection from Las Vegas to this California home, I had 225 boxes of books. Who knew? I had no idea. And it's sectioned. I can find books because they're all in sections, whether it be 20th century art and architecture, 20th century architecture and design, 20th century art, pre-20th century architecture, pre-20th century design, or the largest collection is books about the design in France of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, which is my favorite period. Chairs from John Dickinson, an important historic contributor to the design in California, Rob's Johns Gibbings. I seem to fall in love with lots of things. We have a late 19th century British sculpture by Lord Leighton called The Sluggard in the background. I am enchanted. Arthur, my husband, has said, I don't think you've ever met a chair you didn't love. This is the bedroom. When I grew up in Las Vegas, reading my mother's art books, I was curled up in an Eros Saarinen chair. So I have always had one with me in my homes. So I can curl up in the corner of the bedroom. A bed created by a company that Arthur and I are partners in Los Angeles called Quintus, which makes bespoke furniture. And this is one of my favorites. And just living comfortably. And here we are in Venice in the room that you're looking at. And you can see that the painting behind me has not the painting that was hanging above that large dark cabinet when the photograph was taken, nor is the painting above the sofa. So moving things around, letting things live. Sculptures have changed positions, other things have changed. But we're sitting on chairs that were created in 1776 in Paris, which I like because, of course, so was my home country. And all of the textiles are Rubelli, our best friends in Venice. A long relationship that we developed when we changed took Rubelli textiles and their exquisite design, which I loved, which would be in silk and cost $280 a yard, so I couldn't use it. And with them, developed it in Trevira, which is inherently flame retardant and durable and sunproof, for $40 a yard because I needed to buy it by the kilometer to cover the walls of a convention space. Wow. So I was able to use the most noble fabrics, the most exquisite fabrics, because the Rubelli family was willing to go through the difficulty of developing with me a version that was both durable and affordable. 40 is still a lot for that use in hospitality, but something Steve was happy to pay. And our kitchen, which is completely unlike a Venice kitchen. This was the entry when we bought this apartment. The kitchen was way in the back of the apartment and only for use by staff, but my husband Arthur is an incredible cook, and so he needed an incredible kitchen. Where the sink is today with the mirror above it was double doors to the formal dining room, but no more. And this was that formal dining room. This is now the bedroom in the Venetian apartment. All of the other rooms you saw and the room we're sitting in have walls the color of the Grand Canal on October 13th at 2:30 in the afternoon. And I know that because I had all of Benjamin Moore's 5 major paint decks comprising thousands of colors to match the color of the water exactly. And then the rooms upstairs are 5:30 that afternoon.
Oh
Same
my
water.
gosh.
This is red because the palazzo that's across from us, out of view of the window in this room, is also red. And this is the upstairs guest room, which had been the room for the chauffeur. And of course, in Venice, your chauffeur is actually a gondoliere.
I love it.
So this is the 5:30 in the afternoon version of the Grand Canal water. With all Rubelli textiles and collected things from everywhere. So, what do you do when you're in Venice is the question I'm often asked. And what I do is follow a great passion for restoration and conservation. And I started early by Arthur and I, and friends of ours, good friends of ours in America as well, Patty and David Schwartz, who were coming to Venice often with us. We started supporting the restoration efforts of Venetian heritage. And I liked Venetian heritage because no more than 10% of their annual budget goes to operations, education, and other things. 90% of every single dollar raised goes to actual restoration and improvement. So this is Ca d'Oro, arguably the finest example of Venetian Gothic architecture in all of Venice on the Grand Canal. It contains the Giorgio Franchetti collection, which is a highly elevated collection of Venetian Renaissance period art, and it was languishing. It had been intervened by Carlo Scarpa, the greatest Venetian architect of the 20th century, but it did not have the right kind of climate control. There was no UV control at its windows. It did not have the right kind of lighting. It needed everything to be restored. So for the past 3 years, we at Venetian Heritage, as a massive project, have been restoring the entire palazzo. And that included this exquisite night lighting, supported by Pomellato, the great jewelry company, and designed by a great Venetian lighting designer, so that as you pass on the Grand Canal at night, it is this mysterious, charming, beautiful, beckoning postcard that you have to visit the next day. That's one of our projects. 2 days ago, in that gallery, which is mostly under construction, Venetian Heritage unveiled the new restoration of this exquisite Giovanni Bellini, very early painting. He was in his mid-20s when he painted this. He was going to become the most important early Renaissance artist of Venice, and this was one of the paintings that established him. A completely new way of imagining the Pietà. No one had ever painted this composition in anything like it, nor had they ever colored it this way. There's a humanity and a theatricality to this scene that had never entered Venetian art. And once Bellini painted it that way, it would never leave. This kind of color and drama, theatricality would become a part of Venetian art from then on. So this belongs to the museum in Rimini, but we agreed, because it was created by a most important Venetian, to support the restoration. It just completed, and again, we saw it 2 days ago. It will travel to New York, and in January, it can be seen at the Morgan Library.
Oh, wow.
for a very short time. I think it's January to April.
Okay.
And then it will return to Rimini. And it probably won't be available for Americans to see without traveling to Rimini. I'm an American. I travel in Italy all the time. I have yet to go to Rimini. So I'm glad we're able to get this important masterwork out in the world. And Arthur and I are supporting the restoration of the most important and largest Bellini at the Galleria dell'Accademia. This is the Palace San Giobbe. When Napoleon took over Venice in 1797, one of the things he did was close many churches. Another thing he did was establish the Accademia di Belle Arti, hoping to get a whole new crop of artists to aggrandize his imperial court. And so he moved a lot of the masterworks from those churches that were closed into the Belles Artes, so it could be in the Accademia, so it could be studied. This is one of the most important and in need of restoration. It's painted on panels. You can see some of the horizontal panel cupping that's shading the composition, and it will go through about a year and a half of restoration behind a see-through barrier so that everyone going to the museum will be able to watch the restoration of the Bellini.
What a gift.
It is, because I don't think most people appreciate that these paintings need restoration to survive.
Yes.
This has already been restored several times, or we would not be having the opportunity to restore it. And I also think that once I am in a museum and I see a restoration, we're not unique in this, but we're one of the few in Venice, it becomes my painting. I take an ownership because I've watched the creation intervene with the painting, and I think that's important. So we're really delighted that we're able to help the Galleria dell'Accademia with this masterwork. And it has in it my favorite saint, San Sebastian, who for a long time was the only excuse for artists to paint the male form, with the exception of the crucifix.
Yes. And I think it's also interesting that every restoration is not only the chance to restore a work of art, but so much meaning is given back to it. Research happens, scholarly articles are written about it. So you really kind of polish a work of art to then really bring it to attention of everyone, and the scholars and public alike.
Right. And there's so much learned about it. The previous restorers didn't have X-ray, they didn't have infrared, they didn't have any of the advanced techniques we have, which really tell us what's underneath the painting. Did he start with the drawing, or did he paint direct? It answers many of the problems about the technique of these geniuses. I remember when they were restoring the Assumption at the Frari, which Save Venice did, another outstanding restoration effort in Venice, which we support. They assumed that because it was a painting on panel and had been moved 6 times, they assumed that they were going to find an enormous amount of damage on the surface that would require restoration. They did not. It was almost entirely autographed tissue, created again in his mid-20s.
Yes.
It made his career. And so this is also a revolutionary painting in that it is the painting that establishes a new composition which would be repeated by artists in Italy, France, Spain, everywhere, called La Sagrada Conversazione, where the Madonna is enthroned. She has musicians playing as if she has a court, and she has angels in her court playing music, and she is being admired in a conversation with important saints. And they're often important because it's a Franciscan church, so St. Francis is in it. San Giobbe is maybe there because the patron paying for the painting the first time is named Giobbe. And he might have a son named Sebastian, and that's how Sebastian gets into the painting.
Nothing is accidental.
No.
I also love how, of course, all the Sacra Conversaziones in Venice have musical angels. They don't have them in Florence.
No.
Or, for example, look at a beautiful dome, which of course recalls St. Mark.
Yes.
With a beautiful gold ceiling. So yes, just truly an amazing work to be bringing back to life. That's amazing.
So it's always been shown in the form that we see it, outside of its architectural enclosure. And of course, Bellini solved the compositional problem to honor the architectural enclosure and create the illusion that you're looking beyond the wall of the church into this special space with a half-niche dome, like you would find in Basilica San Marco in faux gold gilded Byzantine tile. So we're hoping to also have the architectural frame for this laser red in San Giobbe and then recreated. We can't take it out of San Giobbe, but recreated in a 3D printing so that it can return the architrave and we can see the painting as Bellini intended us to see it.
Incredible.
Very important. And that's the next step in our support of this important restoration. This painting is, I believe, 19 feet tall, to give you a scale. So it's going to take a long time to get all of these things done. It also has to be moved to another room. That requires walls being taken down.
Wow.
So it's going to take a while.
It's an adventure.
I get to watch.
Yes.
And then...
You're very kind to share your Venetian secrets.
Venetian secrets.
Yes.
So this is this shouldn't be a secret. This is a church that has been completely restored by Save Venice. It took them 11 years. It is called San Sebastiano. And of course, I love San Sebastian. I collect San Sebastian, but this is also the opus, the great work of Paolo Veronese, who for me is the most elegant of all the high Renaissance artists of Venice. We have Titian, who is inventing the new way of painting and is the painter's painter. We have Tintoretto, who is the expressionist dramatist of the painters of the Renaissance. And then we have Veronese, who for me establishes the elegance and he invents a new elegant way of posing everyone, of dressing everyone. He shows everyone to their very best. And he did everything. He invented the ceiling. This is mid-16th century. He invented the ceiling architecture, which is off-white and gilded, which had never been done before. It had always been mahogany and gold. So he paints all the frescoes around the room, the altarpiece, the paintings on the side of the altar, and several of the chapels on the side are also Veronese. He works with the architect and basically controls it. And this, unlike any other Venetian church, feels like walking into a glass of champagne. It is truly effervescent. It is light. Everything moves because of the little bits of gilding that are included. Nothing is... gilding can be overdone very easily. This is exactly the right amount. This light color framing on the ceiling, the illusionism of angels flying above, and the great story of Esther that's painted on the ceiling in an incredibly inventive way with a composition that holds together like no other ceiling composition in Venice, I think is a great... and he's also entombed here, Veronese. It was his place. And then we have, this is not showing my favorite painting, but this is an interior of San Zaccaria, which when the Doge, the elected Duke of Venice, didn't want to fire up the Basilica San Marco, this is where he went to church. It's very close to him. And to the left of this is my favorite painting in Venice, another Sagrada Conversazione by Bellini, which was stolen by Napoleon. It was one of the 16 pieces masterwork stolen by Napoleon. And to get it out of the church, they had to remove the wall behind it. Unfortunately, when the painting arrived at the Louvre, it wasn't the right size, they thought, and so they cut off the top and the bottom. And when they were forced to return it, they did not take out the back wall. They installed it from the front and had to cut the edges around the moldings. But it is still, I think, the most beautifully colored early Renaissance painting, really inventive with lavenders and corals and emerald and ochre and colors that are impossible to put together perfectly in a way that creates the symphony of music that the angels are playing. So this is truly a secret. Again, in the middle of the 1500s, a very wealthy family, the Grimani family, created an exquisite palazzo in what's called Santa Maria Formosa, near Castello, the what is that? The eastern part of Venice. And the Grimani family were the biggest collectors of antiquities in Venice. And one of the reasons their collection got enriched is because they built the Palazzo Veneto in Rome. And in digging the foundations, they found a great part of their collection. And so this room was created in the Palazzo specifically for Grimani to show his antiquities. It was carefully considered and it was carefully documented. He left his antiquities to the state of Venice, and in the document leaving it to the state, he describes the location of every single piece, gives it a name, a number, everything is known. So 10 years ago, when Toto Bergamo Rossi, the director of Venetian Heritage, wanted to restore Palazzo Grimani, he had this impossible idea of putting the tribuna back as it was during the time of the Grimanis. At the same time, the Museo Correr, where the Museo Archeologico is housed, was getting renovations, and they needed a place for some of the antiquities. And so Venetian Heritage, at great expense, moved all of the Grimani antiquities back to the tribuna. And this is truly, I think, one of the single most astounding rooms ever created for an art collection. It truly takes your breath away. I've been in this room more than 100 times, and I still gasp every time I walk in. And everyone I take to the tribuna does the same thing. It is extraordinary.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And to think also that all of these were kind of in the storages, dusty rooms scattered around Venice, and now they're brought back. And
the
palace lives again. The
Yes.
museum is now a reason for people to actually visit and go. Yes, unbelievable.
And when they were in the Museo Correr, you could look into the room that housed them, but you couldn't walk up to them. There was a rope keeping you out of the room. And so now you can actually get into the room and enjoy them and see how a 16th century Venetian saw his world when he filled it with antiquities.
Yes.
It is a moment frozen in time. It is perfectly preserved in this extraordinary room. Thank you, Toto. He is truly a genius, I think. Toto thinks of things that no one else does in the restoration game in Venice, and mostly to put things the way they were.
And he was a guest in Studiolo twice.
Yes.
So I have to bring these Studiolos back. Yes,
He's genius.
unbelievable.
He's genius. So finally,
my favorite.
after you've enjoyed all of this beauty in Venice, where do you go for sustenance? This is my favorite restaurant called Vini d'Arturo on a street of my favorite name, the Calle dei Assassini.
Yes.
So if you needed to find an assassin in 16th century Venice, you could go to the Calle dei Assassini and hire one. And this tiny little 32-seat restaurant does not serve fish. I'm allergic, so that's one of the reasons. But it is the warmest atmosphere. It's like being at home. Everybody in Venice who lives in Venice goes to Vini d'Arturo. Hani and Ernesto, whose restaurant it is, are the most gracious hosts. They know everyone. I have met many people like you in Vini d'Arturo. My world has been expanded by experiencing this restaurant. And they make many things that no one else makes. They have a spaghetti carciofi, which takes them 4 days to make. It's like a artichoke pesto, extraordinary. And they have something called bracciola, which is a pork side that's been lightly dusted with flour, flash fried, and then dressed in a secret vinegar that is extraordinary. And they have a dessert that they call tiramisu, but resembles no other tiramisu on the planet. And once I had theirs, I won't have anyone else's.
Wow.
And there we go.
That's the end of our... I didn't want to interrupt your discussion and description of your own work, because there's really no questions left when you are looking at the room and describing to us what you saw there, what you wanted to create there. I think also just one thing to mention is that you're not really looking at materials that have to be beautiful, but you have them to be perfect. Something that I think Elaine Wynn said was, even Disneyland closes for restoration. Your spaces have to be lived in 24/7.
365
days a year.
We never get to close for cleanup. Disneyland closes and you can clean up in the early morning hours.
Yes.
No, we are open 24/7, 365.
So it was not just design or creating something beautiful, but actually thinking about masses of people to be going through that space.
And durability.
Yes, yes.
I'm pleased to say, so along that line, I retired 5 years ago, and my successor, Todd Avery Lanahan, brilliant talent, was asked to redesign the casino. And he said, are you crazy? This is the most successful casino per square foot on planet Earth. We're not going to redesign it, we're going to restore it. And so the entire Wynn Las Vegas casino has been fully restored. Every wall fabric, every tassel, every passementerie on the edge of drapery, every light shade, everything has been completely replaced as it was, which I think is, it will make me love Todd forever, but I think it's the right thing to do. Just because something has been used a lot,
doesn't mean it has to be stripped down and reinvented.
And why do you have to reinvent? Why is there this thirst for being now?
Yes.
One of the questions I always received when I went on speaking engagements is, what do you see as the current trend? Which I think is a poisonous question in the world of design. I pay absolutely zero attention to trends. And one of the dangers of a trend is if you're inspired by a trend, by the time you get it installed in your interior, the trend has passed. So I never wanted to be with it. I wanted to be way ahead of it. I wanted everybody chasing me. I don't want to be the one chasing someone else. And I think that was another one of the reasons that I had some success, because I paid no attention to what the industry was doing, only to what I thought were the great possibilities of creation. And because I myself and my team were willing to go to any length, any time, any effort, any overtime, didn't matter. If we believed in it, we would do it.
But going back to 15th century Florence,
yes,
the way, for example, someone like Cosimo the Elder supported his favorite artists, I think that you had such a great fortune to have a visionary who was your biggest patron, your biggest fan. And there was this understanding, because when you speak about them, I can just feel the love, the admiration, the respect you had for them. So kind of that went both ways. So I think, my two questions. One is, what would be the words of advice you would give someone who is a designer today? Because I have a feeling when you were creating these incredible interiors, the cost wasn't an issue. I think it was more about making a statement. It was.
I always had a budget.
Wow. But it seemed that the budget was kind of,
it was generous.
Yes.
It was realistic for the demand that was put on us.
Yes.
But there was always a budget, and we often had to reinvent an invention to fall within budget. Often we would imagine the easy way of making something, and that would be too expensive. And so we would have to find a different way. For instance, I wanted to have some hand embroidery done, and of course I wanted to go to Lesage in Paris. That was going to be too expensive. So through research with Elaine Wynn, she went to Oscar de la Renta and asked who did his embroidery. He was famous for the quality of the embroidery on his gowns and clothing. And he revealed to us a source that had a studio in India. Mm-hmm. And so I started using Ankasa, they were called. I started using them, and I exploded into the world of embroidery because I could now be sure I could afford it within my budget. A substantial budget, absolutely, but still a budget.
Got it.
And I think with the Medici, I think they too superimposed budgets. I think bankers, when they commission a work, are astute about the expenses. And I think it looks like they gave carte blanche to everybody because of the result. But my feeling is, I don't know this for sure, but my feeling, you probably know, my feeling is they did have limitations. They approved budgets. They approved the cost of things.
Yes, they did. Many contracts of the artists, even like Domenico Ghirlandaio, actually come back to their patrons and they say, would you please give me just a little bit more, because I'm barely breaking even with the cost of materials that were usually included in the kind of the cost of what they were paid. So interesting. But I think, what would be the advice you would give someone today?
So
Living in a world that we are living in, which is different.
Yeah, but I still think knowing the history of your craft is very important.
Okay.
And I think knowing the history of art is very important. And not just knowing it so that you can recognize a Raphael drawing if you see one. Understanding how and why it was created. Because you're being posed various demands and you're going to have a creative solution to those demands. So understanding how those who went before you created those solutions. For instance, why do we have sofas? They started as a way for women to sit on something with their paniers, with their giant gowns. Before that, it was just chairs. But they wouldn't accommodate the huge paniers of the French court. And so sofas and settees and other things started being invented. Why are armchairs in the form armchairs are in the form of? Why do we have occasional tables that sit next to chairs? And why are they that shape and size? If you learn the history, you learn who made those solutions first and why they made it. It might have been a particular demand of a patron. Or it might have been that they saw the problem and invented a solution and saw this particular form as the most delightful way to do that. And then someone else came along and said, well, I like that form, but what about this form? And they changed it and things evolved. So understanding the history of design, but also the history of the world of sculpture. If you understand the history of art and architecture, you begin to understand proportion. Yes. You can make... There are rules of proportion that everybody should know, and there are many badly proportioned rooms created by people who don't know them. Often people walk into them and they don't feel right. Right? As humans, we don't feel right in those rooms, and so we don't spend time in them. And often it's nothing they can put their finger on, but it's just a case of bad proportion. The room does not feel right to the human size.
Yeah.
So,
which is something like Renaissance painters and architects really truly knew, the golden mean, right? The beautiful proportions. Yes. Well,
they had just rediscovered it. The books of Vitruvius had finally come forward, because even though they were written by a pagan, there were those who were courageous enough to read Vitruvius, even though certain institutions didn't approve of reading or studying anything that had to do with a pagan or paganism. But they put that aside to learn what they could learn, and the result is Palladian architecture, which is the most copied architecture ever developed in the world. So,
or the Vitruvian Man, the way the Vitruvian describes it, then of course, or Leonardo da Vinci is looking to, okay, how can I put a visual to these Vitruvian words, and it's actually just across the canal from us.
I can see it.
In the Academia, which is amazing.
And the Academia let us see it.
Yes.
For about 3 months recently.
Yes. And I got deep dove into the subject, and it was really incredible.
Yeah, it is. The other thing I would tell a young designer is learn how to take risks. Don't do what other people are doing. Why bother? It's too hard. And you need to, if you have this font of knowledge about what proportion is, how things happened, what makes a chair comfortable, what makes a table work in the room, how embroidery is done, all of those things, learn about how things are made, learn about how things got made, then you have a platform on which to invent. And you can take risk from an educational launch pad rather than from ignorance. And risk is always more successful from an educated point of view than it is from an ignorant one.
I love it. Roger, how can we elevate our own spaces? If most of the people I know, younger crowds, younger students as well, have a budget and they live in a world of designed by IKEA. What would be that kind of 1 or 2 design principles we should think about when we think about our own space?
I think if you're young and you're beginning to accumulate your life, my solution was to buy fewer really good things. If I couldn't afford 4 good dining chairs, I would buy one. And then 2 years later, I'd buy another one. But I had really, really good chairs. And I used to actually throw dinner parties that were picnics on the floor of my apartment because I decided not to buy cheap chairs. And we were all young. We could sit on the floor. What is it? And I would spread a red gingham tablecloth and bring out a wicker basket, even though I didn't need it to get what was coming in, and make it feel like a picnic. So there are solutions. I think also that we tend to go for the easy rather than the correct. And just because it's easy to get and it's there in front of you doesn't make it right. So be specific. And I think that if you're not a trained designer, if you don't know how to really accumulate a room and form it perfectly, if you can find a photograph of a space, even maybe photograph a space you've been in, that you find absolutely fit for you. You walked into the room, this is the way I want to live. And you keep that photograph and analyze everything you do going forward so that it fits that particular vision. I think that's very helpful. In design, we call it a look of. I want my room to have the look of this room. Yeah. And it helps you focus, and it helps you not get diverted onto something else. So,
yes.
And you have to be disciplined to assemble good design.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Absolutely
and
amazing.
Comfort, comfort, comfort.
Yes.
It can be beautiful, but if it's not comfortable, again, why bother? Which goes to, don't make your selections on a screen. If you find a chair that you're interested in, do whatever you need to go experience the chair. You have to sit in it to know if it's comfortable. You cannot tell from a photograph. You cannot choose a bedside table from a photograph because you can't sense the presence, the physical scale. Yes. Take the time, whatever it takes, to actually experience everything. Do not buy fabrics online. You don't know how they feel. You don't know what color they really are. Video screens lie in terms of color.
True.
I have never, ever bought anything that I have seen online, with the exceptions of some things in auction catalogs, because I know the artist and I know the designer, and I've already sat in that chair.
I understand.
I know what a Georges Jacob, Louis XVI chair is going to feel like, because he was very consistent. So I didn't sit in the chairs we're sitting in before I bought them in Paris. I bought them at auction, but I knew that they were Georges Jacob. I know when they were made. I knew what they were going to feel like when I sat down.
I understand. Wow. You know, thank you so much. I think you should look at the comments here. Wow, every bit of this presentation is a thrill. Sacra conversazione. I mean, if that is a compliment that we will remember, bravo, bravo, fascinating, grazie, such an inspiring. You have really given us so much. What a beautiful introduction to your world, really.
Well, and I'm impressed by your audience. Your audience is filled with curators and scholars and people who advance the cause of beauty forward in the world. And bravo to all of you. You're so necessary to every effort of making civility civil. Because without curators, without understanding art, without scholars doing research, we would live in a really flat place. And so bravo to all of you. I really love seeing who joins your studio. It's a fascinating group of people, that's for sure. Impressive.
And, when we started during the pandemic, I had no idea we would actually be still here 5 years later talking about stuff. But I just wanted to say your capriccios. I was so thrilled when I saw them at the Arturo, when you showed me your book. And you said something really beautiful in the book. You said you're always searching for beauty, because if we are not searching for beauty, what are we searching for?
Exactly.
And I would love to end our conversation really with that question.
Yeah. My favorite art historian is Dave Hickey, and his simple premise was that the most important thing about art is that it brings us beauty. I completely agree.
Yes. And makes our life worth living, isn't it?
It does.
Yes.
It does. And art is not only beautiful in a visual sense, but it can be beautiful in an oral sense. It can be what we're listening to, but it can also be really beautiful because of its story and because of its history. And so the deeper you dive into what attracts you,
Yes.
the richer it becomes, the more beautiful it becomes.
And maybe we can end also going back to Monet. Monet, who comes to comes to Venice, completely depressed. He's painting endless lilies. His wife, his second wife, Alice, is, you know, depressed beyond means. So he kind of loses his way. He loses the touch. And he comes to Venice, and now the beautiful exhibition at the Brooklyn Art Museum, which then goes to San Francisco, you know, next year. But what I learned when there was a symposium here in Palazzo Vecchio, in Palazzo Ducale, and they said he goes to a concert. So he finally comes, he lands in Venice. He's here, even though he never wanted to see it. He comes to Venice, he goes to a concert, and something happens to him. The time he spent in that room listening to a beautiful opera singer, we won't know her name, his wife writes back and she says something like, "Oh, he's feeling better." So
he was probably in one of those effervescent Venetian rooms, and because of the water and the reflection and all of that moving constantly, it's like being in music all the time.
Yes.
Music has to deal with time. Paintings can be static. They sit on the wall. You can experience them as you experience them.
Yes.
But Venice as a city is very musical because it's different. It changes every moment, just as a well-composed piece of music does.
Yes.
I think he was inspired also by the light. As we said, we had a lavender day today.
Yes. Wow.
Very few people can live in a city that has lavender skies.
Unbelievable. Roger, you have made me teary-eyed with this conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to have you in the Studiolo, and I hope our audience loved it as much as I loved being here with you.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for joining us and for all you do.
Next Studiolo will be 5th of December. I'll be hopefully in New York, and we will talk about Michelangelo's poetry. So we will have Sarah Pradhan, who is a Michelangelo expert, Michelangelo poetry expert, and we will talk about Michelangelo and kind of what moved him to create these incredible pieces of art, actually on paper, with his words. So I'm much looking forward to that. Grazie.
Grazie, prego.